Guys, Fujifilm cooked. They actually started to program stuff. And they've programmed something very good, guys. They probably made a huge effort to do this. But they didn't work on the autofocus. Guess what they did? They made an effort to program something so you cannot downgrade the firmware anymore. The latest firmwares for all cameras that have 0.30 at the end and the ones that remove the options to connect to Instax printers. So they removed the connection to Instax printers and they patched the way we can downgrade our cameras. I'm smiling, but I'm actually very mad. I just bought an XS20. It had firmware 3.2 on it and the autofocus was trash, obviously. I installed the first available firmware 1.11. And guess what? The autofocus was working way better. Then by mistake, I upgraded it to firmware 3.30. I tested it, I said, yeah, it's trash, let's install firmware 1.11 again, and bam, corrupted firmware. Camera won't accept any firmware. I couldn't install any older firmware. The way we've downgraded our cameras before is not working anymore. I really like this camera. I think I like it more than my X-H2S. And when I installed 1.11, multi and product priority, this camera has a vlog mode when you can activate product priority, so you can do this and show stuff at the camera, which is basically multi. If you want to activate product priority, you need to activate multi and disable face eye detection. So product priority is multi. And on firmware 1.11, multi worked perfect. Eye tracking was almost as smooth as my X-H2S with firmware 1.03. But on firmware 3.3 or 3.2, multi is trash, area is trash, face eye detection is trash. Let me show you. This is multi. Firmware 1.11, perfect. Every time it will see the lens. Check this out. Every time it's working. Like X-T3 with firmware 4 or 5. That was perfect. Let's see latest firmware. Firmware 3.3. Okay, it got it, but slow. And now, nothing. Just nothing. Camera is refusing to focus. Multi doesn't work anymore. Now, as I've told you, this camera has a vlog mode with an option for product priority, which means multi. Firmware 1 every time is focusing on that lens. Firmware 1 is focusing every time on that lens, and firmware 3.3, oh, now it focused. Let's try again. Nothing. Look at this. Look, on 3.3, it should be easier for the camera because I'm putting the lens exactly in front of my face, okay? Firmware 3.3 is trash. Look what the firmware 3.3 is doing. Look at this. If you updated your camera to firmware 3.3, you're stuck to this shit autofocus. You cannot downgrade anymore. And I've said that multi was working only on the X-T3 with firmware 4 or 5. I was wrong. On firmware 1 on the XS20, multi is working. And product priority, because it's basically the same thing. Guys, when the XS20 was released, Giulia Trotti made a review for it, okay? And you can see how smooth the camera is tracking her. This tracking is exactly how my X-H2S tracks with firmware 1. She probably had the XS20 with firmware 1.10. The oldest firmware you can find for this camera is 1.11. The motion prediction algorithm has been improved. They've added the prediction algorithm. So as I've showed you before, this is equivalent to firmware 3 on the X-H2S. It's a bit worse. Let's see firmware 1.11 on the XS20. Good. Nice. Smooth-ish, but fine. Usable. Nice. Now XS20 with firmware 3.3. You can see big steps. Hunts like crazy. Big steps. Look. Whoa, that's so ugly. Very distracting transitions. And now let's check the small area, which should be the best mode for autofocus. This is firmware 1.11 on the XS20. Stepping, but very snappy. Every time it will focus on that tripod. Every time it will focus on it. With steps because it's a Fujifilm camera, but every time with area, it will focus on that. And now let's see the latest Fujifilm technology, firmware 3.3, which blocked the firmware downgrades. Area in the middle. Oh. Horrendous. Oh, what is this? And now, nothing. I didn't do the whole screen recording of the camera, but the area is in the middle. Look at this. So, after testing the XS20, not this one, because this one has 3.3 on it, I can't downgrade the firmware anymore. I went to a friend who has the XS20 with 1.11. An XS20 with firmware 1.11, it is the best Fujifilm camera for video autofocus, because multi is working, because area is working, face eye detection is acceptable. My XH2S from firmware 1 to firmware 7.2 in my testing was never focusing like this in multi. Product priority. So 3 years ago you bought an XS20. You wanted to vlog with it. You wanted to do product priority mode. 3 years of firmware, product priority is not working anymore. Multi is not working anymore. Area is worse. Face eye detection, it is worse. And you cannot downgrade the firmware anymore. Guys, don't install the latest firmwares on your cameras. The 0.30 firmware. On the XH2S firmware 7.30. On XS20 3.30, on XH2 5.30, on the XT5 4.30, and so on. 0.30, don't install it. You will not be able to revert back to another firmware. They've made a big effort, so you cannot do that anymore. Now, I'm selling this Fuji XS20, and I will search for another XS20 with a firmware lower than 3.3. Because I really like this camera. I actually like it more than my XH2S. You lose reliable multi-autofocus, reliable product priority autofocus, smooth face eye video tracking. You even lose that small box area. It is worse. I don't know what to say anymore. I am very mad because this XS20 has a worse autofocus than ever before. And I can't do anything about it. Don't update, guys. Don't do it.